Welcome to the Grit with Wisdom podcast. This is the podcast that delves deep into the inner psyche of not just mountain bikers, but mountain sports enthusiasts from all walks of life in order to discover the tools and the tactics that help us have more fun out in the mountains more often. Our aim here is to help you understand what it takes to push the boundaries of the sports we love from a mental and emotional perspective. Today on the show, we have Patricio Escobar. Patricio is an absolute living legend and an incredible asset to the mountain bike community. From Colombia, he grew up riding cross-country and downhill, even competing in the first ever DH race in the country as a teenager. It was after this, inspired by early videos, that he went on to find his true love of competing in trials biking. He remained competitive for over 20 years, showcasing his skills all over the US, Australia, Japan, and Europe. As a testament to his can-do attitude and versatility, he then switched to riding enduro bikes and made an impressive dent on the EWS scene, winning numerous competitions all around the globe as a 38-year-old who was brand new to the discipline. Unfortunately, this stint in the enduro world and the peak of his racing career was tragically cut short in 2019 by a life-altering crash that left him unable to move anything below the chest. In true character, he continues to shine and give back to the world, providing inspiration and motivation to millions of fans and sharing his incredible love for life and riding on his popular YouTube channel at Patricio Escobar DH. Please bear with us as we did experience some technical connection difficulties, but I assure you that this was all but made up for by the richness of Patricio's stories and the learnings we can take out of what he has to share. With no further ado, let's get into it. Hey, Patricio. Welcome to the Grit with Wisdom podcast. It's great to have you here today. How are you doing?
Hello, Jake. Pretty happy to be here. I'm really, excited for this video and sharing all my life experiences, which have been quite unusual and funny in some ways, and in other ways very thoughtful and deep in everything I've learned all my life.
Totally. Such a wealth of experience you've got there to share. And I'm excited to share that with everyone as we get into it today. I think it would be really cool if we could maybe just have you start by telling us a little bit about your history. Who are you? Where did you grow up? And maybe when did you start riding bikes?
Yeah, well, I was born in 78. So I'm 44 years old. I'm going to be 45 this year. And I was basically born I was born in Medellin, Colombia. I'm Colombian, which is South America. And I was raised not like a common child in Colombia. So I was raised around adventure. I was raised around mountains. I was raised around, the sea, navigation. So all my childhood was like a beautiful exploring movie thing with my mom and my dad. We explored, a lot of places here in Colombia, and actually in the world from pretty young age. Like say in the 80s, I was 6-7 years old. I already traveled around Asia, and I knew countries back then which were not very touristy, like China, Nepal, Indonesia, Malaysia. And actually, I was in Australia too. Where are you from? When I was 8 years old, I went to Australia, and that's when I first got in love with Australia. It's a love that I've never stopped loving. It's a country I've never stopped loving. So from really young age, I was very adventurous, and I started playing with bikes like every other kid do. But I would say I was a little bit like a daredevil. We could say we were always doing like stunts back in the day, and I was always fearless on my stunts. So with age, I started liking bikes more and more. And when I was 14, I got my first mountain bike. This was the year 1992. So that's, really young for mountain biking, as mountain biking as a sport. And I started, so it was actually in 1990 now that I remember. And around 92, I did my first competition, mountain bike competition, cross country. And from there on, I just, I started racing cross country. I competed the first downhill race in Colombia, which was done in 1993.
Wow.
And I was part of that race, which was funny because it was like 7 kilometers long. It was sort of like the John Tomac kind of old school racing downhill, which was like dirt road, full speed, and we had like 3 kilometers down, and then 2 or 3 kilometers on a easy incline, just pedaling for dear life. And it was funny back in the day. We were just riding, rigid bikes with 100 millimeter front suspensions. So we could say that I had all my evolution as a rider started from the basic mountain biking world with cantilever brakes, then to V brakes, then to Maguras, hydraulic brakes, rim hydraulic brakes, and then to disc brakes. So I had the opportunity to do every sort of mountain biking, like whatever history has brought to mountain biking. I will have the honor to live it and ride it. And I think that made me like an all-around rider, because I knew what it took to ride bikes without any brakes, we could say so, and without any suspension. So I was like, hell, if I did that back in the day, I can do anything now with these beautiful new bikes. So that's like the broad sense. In the broad sense, was what was my experience from with bikes. But in between that, I did so much stuff that we could talk about it too.
Absolutely, man. I just want to say, wow, like what a fantastic childhood and what a fantastic place you've came from. It just sounds like such a wealth of incredible experiences over the years, and maybe even, such a good time to be joining the sport of cycling and then mountain biking as it was kind of evolving with you and your riding. Um, that's fantastic. So I'd love to hear like a little bit more about, back in the day when you're riding as a child, you and your friends are out there messing around. You mentioned these like really basic bikes, riding them out on the streets and having no fear. What kinds of things were you doing on the bike back then? And, what was your attitude towards learning new things?
Well, one of the things I remember is that we used to have a sidewalk, where the sidewalk, it had a box culvert. I think that's the name. It's like a drainage for
Yep.
the sewage. So all the top bit had fallen. So in order to cross the sidewalk, I mean to continue on the sidewalk, you either had to get on the road and back on the sidewalk again, or you could pass on this skinny wall on the left, which was like what was left from the box culvert. So, and that was one of the things I started doing, like doing skinnies,
Wow.
just because we could. I don't know. It was something that we didn't think about it. And and I look at riding like today. For example, I have a friend which is pretty famous doing skinnies, which is David Herr, which is Dave. You probably have heard of him.
I know Dave. Yeah,
Uh,
he's a local
yeah,
here on the North Shore.
he's a friend of mine from back in the trials days. So,
Oh,
and
fantastic.
a lot of his videos are riding skinnies, and like I look at his videos and I'm like, yeah, I was doing that back in the day when I was like 10 on a box culvert. But it's the sort of the things that we did.
Hmm.
And nowadays, when I used to do trials and I used to do enduro, I always thought of those moments, and I remember. I'm like, look, if I did that back in the day, I can do it easily right now. Whatever. It was
Yeah.
because people used to watch me and were like, yeah, you're crazy, man, you're crazy. I'm like, look, I'm used to doing this shit. I'm used to doing
That's
this shit from back in the day. So yeah, we used to do that, and we used to, well, we used to do downhill sort of things. One of the things we did here, we have a long hill. It's about 15 kilometers up or down. It's right next to my house. It's one of the main roads here, and it goes from 1,500 meters to 2,500 meters. So it has 1,000 meter elevation drop
Nice.
or climb. And we used to, after school, we used to, get someone to drive us up and just go down the hill full speed. And we did
Fantastic.
like, it was like street downhill racing, more or less. We just, we just loved speed and that sort of things before we even got into it. Was the early 90s, so
Mm.
late 80s, early 90s, where mountain biking as a sport, especially in Colombia, was nothing. So we were just like doing mountain biking without knowing it was like a sport or a thing.
Totally, yeah, pioneering it. And equipment wise, it sounds like, back then the bikes were really basic. Did you have problems with stuff breaking and folding in half all of the time? What was your experience like there?
Yeah, well, one of the things that happened in my transition from riding mountain bikes, my first, I had like a double life, we would say. I had two lives. On
Okay.
my mountain bike, I would race downhill. Well, it's actually three lives. On the same bike, I would race cross country. And
Okay.
in the same bike, I used to do trials. So my earliest beginnings on trials, because when I saw trials for the first time here in Colombia, it was actually another Colombian guy. I was like, hey, I want to do that on my mountain bike. So me and a friend, we would do all of these things, but we would also break bikes because we were doing drops from walls, which were like 4 or 5 feet, like pedal drops
Wow.
on our mountain bikes, and then we would jump sideways from the same wall on the same mountain bike, and then we'd go racing downhill. So we were breaking bikes a lot. The dealers here used to hate us.
When you say mountain bike, you're talking about a hardtail mountain bike, right?
We had, yeah, like
Wow.
I would start it on a Giant, which was
Okay.
an ATX 780, and then from there I went to a Diamondback Axis, and then from there I went to a Carbon Giant CFM2 frame, Carbon CFM2. Most of them had RockShox Mac 21s on the front.
Yeah.
And most of the people won't understand what I'm saying, but a lot of the old guys like me were like, hell yeah, I used to remember those shit. Yeah, we were riding rigid bikes with front suspensions, which were between 90 and 100 millimeters long.
Totally, man. It just amazes me, you talking about these drops and these things you used to do, and then thinking about the equipment you were on. See, I would still find that stuff really impressive, on a modern, 180, 170 mil travel bike, let alone going back to a hardtail with the old rock shocks on there. So that's fantastic to hear, where you've come from and hear how that kind of shapes your perspective as you've looked at doing different things, on a mountain bike throughout your career. I'd love to hear a little bit about your time living down in the US and riding trails down there. What was that like?
So yeah, let me get to that, which is a pretty cool story. Well, from my downhill mountain biking trials days, somewhere in 1995, I switched to trials completely. So I fell in love with trials. I got myself a GT team trials bike, like the ones Hans Ray used to ride.
Nice.
Mm, we actually, me and a friend, we actually went on in 1995. We went to the US, and there was a competition in Big Bear, California, and there was a trials national or world championship competition, and there was also downhill and there was also dual slalom. So from 1995, we had a nice picture about what was the world level riding, being trials or being dual slalom or downhill. So we got glimpse of that. So when we came back to Colombia, we bought some tapes, and we just learned from VHS tapes. Basically, we just learned from
Right.
VHS tapes, and that brought me to I was in school back in the day, and then in 1997 I graduated from my school. My school here in Colombia is actually an American school, so I had a U.S. diploma.
Okay.
So I could easily apply to a university in the US. And that sent me to California again. So I was there, I was like 19 years old in California, living on my own with my trials bike.
Oh, sounds like wild
Well,
times.
and I was actually much fun, back in the day. Well, I met a lot of the locals in California, which are still my friends. And, I did some really, really nice stuff. I used to ride right on the beach all the time, Long Beach, all around all the beaches actually. And the people there, it was really funny because the people there used to give me money. Like I was riding my bike on the piers, and the people thought that I was doing like a show. And
Oh,
they were
wow.
giving me, $10 or $20 bills. And I was okay, hell yeah. I don't care. I have free lunch today. So that in that time I went to college. It was 2 years. I was from 1997 to 1999, and that also gave me the opportunity to ride local and national competitions in California. So I used to ride the local California Trials Championship and the Norma National Trials Championship. And I competed in Mammoth. I competed in Big Bear. I competed somewhere in Orange County. So, I was kind of known back in the day from, the community and doing trials in the US, especially in California. And I think I made a big impact because one of my friends, which is Scott, his name is Scott Thompson, is from California. He still today, he tells me, Patricio, look, I still see your lines from Redondo Beach, and it's something that nobody has done yet. We
Is
used
that
to do
right?
crazy stuff. I was pretty good on my trials, like not so good competing, but I was a really good daredevil for sure. I
Mhm.
used to do big, chest high bunny hops and really high gaps.
So what was it about trials riding that really grabbed your interest?
A lot of things. One, the bikes. We in the US, people used to ride more what they call stock bikes, which is it's counterintuitive because it's actually modified mountain bikes. So what they did is they called it stock bikes, and they were just mountain bikes, regular mountain bikes with small frames, lowered seats, and modified rear tire with a big rig tire, and
Okay.
no chainring in the front, or small chainring in the front. We used to put a road cage on the rear, so the chain, the gears were small and lighter. So, but for us and in the rest of the world, we loved what we would call modified bikes or
Mhm.
mods, which is a specialized trials bike. And back in the day, we only had 20-inch trials bikes. So, I think the bikes were so cool. They had the hydraulic brakes. They were aluminum bikes with a fat rear tire. And it was like such a cool bike. It was so different from everything else with the small seat and the bash guard and being able to do whatever I could think of everywhere. And it was cool because it's also a sport that, back in the day, you could do anywhere and just ride around the neighborhood, finding, obstacle challenge. And it also, one of the things I also loved about trials is that it took me into nature. I thought of trials like something similar to surfing.
Yeah, so it's fantastic to hear, about those experiences in the early days of trials bikes. I could just imagine what it would have been like going from such a basic bike growing up as a kid to all of a sudden having this awesome kind of purpose-built machine with hydraulic brakes and all of the cool gear on it. That's rad. I'd love to talk a little bit, yeah, about like the mental tools or techniques that you use to prepare for some of this riding. You're doing some pretty crazy stuff.
Well, I think I think I had a a progression, meaning I went from just riding for fun to competing on the national Colombian circuit and becoming national Colombian trials champion pretty soon in my career, and then having the opportunity to compete at the world level also pretty soon in my career. Started to focus my riding style and technique from just having fun to doing it, in a serious manner, where I could, increase my level and be competitive nationally and internationally. So that mindset changed through my progression, and I think it started to peak at around say I went to the US, came back to Colombia. That's around the year 2000, and then at around 2010, I was already like 10 times national champion, and I had the opportunity to ride at different world level competitions. So I think that experience focused me on training with the purpose and riding with the purpose of beating myself. That was actually my mindset. I wanted to I knew I could beat the best Patricio I could be at the moment. I knew I could beat him. So I'm like, okay, I can beat you, Patricio. I can beat you. Used to do this, but now you can do better. So that was my training perspective on the trials bike.
That's awesome.
I always try to push a little bit more, and I was really focused on that. I was actually, I used to ride a lot on my own. I could train with the speed and without the distraction of just going out with friends, fooling around and whatever. I used to love riding by myself and actually timing the sections and trying everything one try, which is part of the philosophy of trials, which basically you need to do it once and you have to do it right, because then you get penalized without any practice on that obstacle. So I was really focused. And that gave me a lot of, a lot of triumphs. And I did really good competitions, not only here in Colombia, but also abroad. So I think that's what changed. I think the progression and being so good at it changed my chip.
That's fantastic. Such a great attitude there, constantly competing against yourself and comparing yourself to yourself rather than to anyone else you might be competing against. I love that. It sounds like, you were super laser focused in and you took your training really seriously. Did you ever find that maybe you were too hard on yourself, or that it affected your riding by, being too focused?
Not on riding on my trials days. I think that actually helped me a lot, and it helped me in the sense that I was way above my, say here in Colombia, way above my competition. And actually, like I told you, my goal was not to get beaten by them. My goal was to be better, the better me. So that actually helped me, because I could, I could focus on my training a lot, and it never interfered with whatever I wanted to do. And actually, it gave me a buffer, which I knew I could go on a vacation for whatever time. And I used to spend a lot of time off the bike, actually, and for whatever reason, being on one adventure or the other, or maybe an injury. I would come back and I would, still win, because I was so good. And that also gave me the opportunity to just lay off the bike, because my competition was lagging, because no one never like really trained like I did here, at least here in Colombia. None of my peers were like too focused on being good. They used to ride good, and there were a lot of talented riders, but they never really, spent the time to really train like an athlete.
Right.
And it's something I used to like from those days, and that is still true to me.
Yeah, dude, that's fantastic. It sounds, really similar to kind of a concept I'll teach a lot of my students, and that's to focus on controlling the controllable. So, we can control getting better than we were yesterday, but we can't control how good any of our competitors are or how bad any of our competitors are.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic to hear. And I know you mentioned when we were chatting kind of off air about this mental strategy you have of, writing for ego versus writing for fun. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think it's something I've concluded over the years, and it could be a dangerous path for some people, because when you start to say to win and to be good at a sport in a competitive level, not in a fun, just riding with friends level, just when you start to compete, most of the times you you have the pressure to perform good again, and that's something a lot of athletes struggle,
Mm,
because when you get to the top, you have added pressures on yourself, and that's actually something worse for a lot of athletes. Sometimes a lot of athletes say they could say it's been tougher now that I'm on the top, because
mm,
I have a lot of pressure, and that pressure is just ego. It's just something that you need to prove to someone else.
mm,
You want to prove someone else that you're good, and you're expected from those people to be good. So it's a pressure that you put on yourself, because you want to show everyone that you really are good. So that's when you that mindset could end up in in a I would call it like a spiral of death, or it's like an analogy from say like a toilet, where when you flush the toilet, and it's just sucking from below. The further you go in, the harder to get out.
totally.
So you could end up in a spiral of death, because you just want to prove everyone that you are good, and then you might overtrain yourself, or you might fall because you wanted to go faster than before, or you might try something that you're not trained to do, or an obstacle that you don't have the skill set yet to do, and that's when accidents can happen, or injuries. You could have like kidney injuries, or ligament, or knee, or over training injuries. So that's something that people need to take into account. They need to always be mindful on when they are either competing against themselves or competing for others. When you start to compete for what others think of you, that's just ego. And if you want to get better in anything, I think you have the anyone can get better at anything, and that's something good. If you want to just be better, do it more precise, and that's something that you don't need to show anyone. If you're just doing it for yourself, and you're better, that's not ego. Ego is when you want to show off. Basically, you just want to show off. People, look, I'm better, so
Mm,
I'm better than you, or look, I'm better than before. And we could say that some ego is not bad, like with friends. It's something that you fool around, and you could do like fun competition between friends. But when it gets stressful, when it gets into your nerves, when it gets to making you do stuff that could be dangerous, that's when everyone needs to be mindful that you need to stop. Look, hold on, don't do this because whatever people think. Do it because you can be safe, you can be good, and do it for yourself, not for anyone else.
yeah. Yeah, man, such wisdom there. I love that idea that you got to do stuff for internal reasons because you want to do it because you think it will be fun, not because of what anyone else might think or what you might think of yourself if you do it.
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
that. Do you have any strategies for making sure that you don't end up in one of these spirals of debt or making sure that you don't get caught up in the ego? I know it's easy to do sometimes.
Well, if we're talking about strategies, I think you need to be conscious. You have to have a lot of consciousness meaning you need to be aware that your life is not revolving on training and training and training and just getting better because you have the pressure of being good. So I think if it's a subject that trainers and athletes talk about, the more we get this word out, the more people say, look, yeah, I need to be careful on my training. I need to be careful on my career because something, bad can happen. I think it's something that all trainers need to talk to their athletes, because maybe, from the training perspective, when we have trainers, which a lot of athletes do, they just want to push them. But, that's also stressful. So I think there's no tragedy, but I think it's something that needs to be spoken a lot in sport and in sport health and in mental health. And a lot of people get frustrated because of that too, because sometimes you get injured and you cannot, compete again. And we've seen a lot of athletes even commit suicide because, whatever injury they have, they cannot be good again. And I think it's something not worth it. I think it's not worth to end living because you cannot do good in a sport. I think it's something that it's so close-minded to think that way. And it's born because of that pressure. So, I don't know. I think there's no strategy. I think, like I told you, and the conclusion is, let's talk about it. Let's and be mindful, be conscious, and do it for yourself, not for anyone else.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. I think that's, a really important point you bring up about, raising awareness of the mental side of mountain biking and sports in general, whether we're competing or whether we're just riding for pleasure. It's really important to make sure that we're doing things for the right reason and we're not putting ourselves at risk because we're doing things for the ego. So I'm curious.
I wanted to, sorry, I interrupt you. And there's even a next step, which is something we kind of tried to do here on last year, which are races. We did an enduro race. It was called Zero Stress or No Stress.
Okay.
It was the Zero Stress Enduro Racing. It's something some people do. I know maybe in Canada they try to do like zero stress rating, which is it's like a day of riding. The only difference is that you have, you have the checkpoints where you want to time yourself. You have the timing chips, but the road it's open, or the trails are open for just riding for fun, riding with your friends, and that type of competition takes the stress out of competition, and that makes riders, ride, for fun. And even sometimes, or a lot of the times, when you're riding for fun, you're probably riding faster than when you're riding with the pressure of people looking at your time and thinking, look, he did bad, he did good. Sometimes when you take that pressure off racing, and you could do, racing without that pressure in an ambient or environment, in an environment where it's less stressful to ride. It's actually a good way to let people know that, look, we could also race for fun, and you can have a good time and actually be fast.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It sounds like such an awesome event you were part of creating, kind of removing the whole pressure around this idea of racing and just being like, hey, let's have a fun day on bikes. And if we go fast as a result, that's awesome.
Exactly.
I love that, man. Really cool. Now, I do need to ask, when you were racing or competing in trials, if you ever say had a bad day or things weren't working out for you, you didn't land a trick, how did you respond? What would you tell yourself?
Let me think. Well, I was a bit disappointed. Sometimes when I used to compete, even if I won a race and I did not ride good, I was a bit disappointed with myself, because I would say, look, you train so much and or you're training hard and you didn't ride well. What's happening? And that's a
Mm.
question I ask myself a lot. And that brings back a lot of the mentality about sport, which is what we're talking about. Is competing is tough on your mind most of the times, and it's a struggle sometimes. So you can even win or lose, and if you do bad because you didn't ride the way you wanted to do, you could be hard on yourself, which I think now that I'm doing like retrospective and thinking back on it, I think it's something. I think it's a mistake. I think we all need to do. If we want to be good, we need to do bad. It's a bit of a contradiction, but from mistakes, from being bad, is that you end up getting better. So I think it's something we need to understand a bit better. You know, every mistake is an opportunity to get better, or every error or every bad day is an opportunity to be better. And you need to take advantage of that bad day or that threat, and make it an opportunity to just what to work on, and maybe next time you can do better. So you always need to swallow bad experiences and look at them as a glass half full, not a glass half empty.
I love it, man. That's such a great perspective looking back there. And, thinking about just being compassionate to yourself, whether you do, the best performance you can do, or whether it's not quite the best you can do, being kind to yourself either way. It kind of reminds me of another saying I heard from someone. It's kind of like you either win or we learn. There's no losing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So there's another question I wanted to ask you kind of on the same track, because I know a lot of mountain bikers have trouble and experience a lot of fear whilst riding. So I wanted to ask you, did you experience fear? And if so, how did you manage it?
Well, that's a good question. I think a lot of people used to ask me that because they didn't understand if I had fear or not. And my answer would be that, yeah, I have fear all the time. I was scared all the time because of a big, drop or a big jump or scary technical rock sections that we have here. And I would ride alone a lot of the times, especially on my enduro days. After I did my trials career, I switched to enduro, and I used to do a lot of solo riding up in the mountains here. And I was alone where nobody used to walk. So I was always kind of afraid that I might fall and break something, and how would I get out of the mountain? And mountains here are pretty tough. Pretty tough because it's very humid. It's very rocky, very dense. Not a lot of people walk here. Maybe on Sundays they do, but in any given day, the trails here are really empty. So any accidents could mean that I would stay overnight or maybe more. So fear was something that I used to have all the time, but it's something that needs to be managed. Meaning that fear is what keeps you safe.
Yeah.
So fear needs to be there, has to be there, and it's a struggle all the time between confidence and fear. You have confidence in one hand. It's like the little angel and the little devil we see in the cartoons. We have confidence on the right and fear on the left. And confidence is the little devil, and fear is the angel saying, "Look, take care, watch out, don't go fast." And confidence is like, you got it, man, you got it, bro. Just get on with it. So it's a balance. I think it's a balance. It's a balance you need to keep all the time balanced. You need to have both all the time. You need to have confidence. You need to be trained well. But fear is what keeps you doing dumb stuff. Fear is what keeps you safe. So I think it's something that we need to balance. I think the conclusion is have fear, have confidence, balance them both. Never go too much to the left and too much to the right. If you go too
Yeah.
much on the fear side, you just might end up, losing many opportunities of fun stuff. Maybe that could be a conclusion. Sometimes because of fear, we don't understand things. I think fear is something that prohibits you also from understanding things. If we have fear in something, it's maybe because we don't understand that thing or that animal or that situation, and because
Mm.
we don't understand it, we block ourselves and don't let us experience or live with that thing that you're afraid of. So I think part of the fear side of the equation is understanding, knowing the consequences, knowing what the things that you fear, how does it work, or how does it function, or understanding something, knowing something helps you cope with the fear. And a lot of people are afraid of things that are trivial or not worth having fear. It's not because they don't understand what it is. So I think that's the conclusion. Have both, have fear, have confidence, understand what is it that you're afraid of, so you have a truth understanding of why you are afraid.
Mm. That's a great analogy there. I love the idea of the devil in one hand and the angel in the other, and trying to find that
Yeah,
balance somewhere in
yeah.
between.
You always have them around.
Totally. And for you, do you think, spending all of this time out alone in the woods or traveling to competitions really helped you, have some time to really reflect on your own balance and where you're at within that scale?
Yeah, I think especially all my time alone in the woods, in the mountains, was a nice place to reflect about this. Because when you're alone, I think that there's a nice quote from a spiritual guide I follow, and he says, "I'm at my best when I'm alone," and that's something people need to work on. Sometimes people need people to be good,
Mm.
to feel good. I mean, not to be good, to feel good. And I think it's a great exercise to be alone, because that lets get deep into your thoughts and have this balance and think about stuff and try to cope with different situations. There's a couple of mountain lions here, and when I was always alone in the woods, it's probably something you guys also, well, not you guys, a lot of you guys struggle with is wildlife in Canada and the US.
For sure, yeah.
And here we have that problem, but not so much. But we still have it, especially when one is alone in the woods,
Totally.
not
Yeah.
with friends or anything, and unsanctioned trails. And I always thought, look, what happens if I find myself in front of a cougar? What will
Mm.
I do? And it's stuff you reflect when you're alone. I think when you're with people, you never think about it. You just
No,
laughing and riding and doing fun stuff all the time. But when you're alone, especially in the woods or on the trials bike, which I also like to explore a lot of faraway rocks and stuff and waterfalls. I had to meditate about this balance, and
mm.
there's a lot of dimensions to this balance. One could be fighting with a cougar, or falling off a rock, or you know or or having the skills to get out of danger, which
Mm.
is also something that you need to take account.
For sure, man. It's great to hear there about your practice, spending time by yourself and building self-belief in yourself rather than, self-belief or confidence based on being in a big group of people or being with your friends. Really cool to dive into that a little bit. I do want to shift gears a little bit here and talk about some common ground we have. I'd love to hear about your time down in Australia. What was it like living in Queensland and riding trails bikes down there?
Well, that was an incredible time. I went to Australia to do my MBA, which is the Master in Business Administration. And I went to Griffith University down there in Queensland. on the Gold Coast. And I went with my trials bike. That was in 2007, from 2007 to 2009. And I met I actually contacted the local guys from before I went. And we made a great friendship. We made awesome friendships, especially with the Queensland guys. Because the locals, we were right there, and Australia is such a beautiful and such a fun place to ride bikes. So much beautiful places to ride them. Actually, I used to ride all along the Gold Coast on every other jetty. So it was awesome. It had some really beautiful obstacles and forests with rocks and snakes and cockatoos and kangaroos and wallabies, and Australia is such a beautiful country. I really recommend it to everyone. And I actually competed a lot in Australia, and I became national champion riding in Australia. I got the medal, but they never gave me the jersey because I was not a national. I didn't have citizenship for Australia. So I did win the competition with two Australian blokes, and they were second and third. I was on top of the podium. I have a photo, but I don't have the T-shirt. They were what the second place was. Joe Brewer was second, or Micah Terry, that's his name. And Joe Brewer got the jersey, and I remember telling him, "Look, you have my jersey. You know that." I told him that on the podium because we used to. The Australians have something really funny that I didn't understand at first. I don't know if you know about this, but do. There's always on a competition or whatever you're doing, they want to hear you. They pass you the microphone and you need to talk. And that happened to me in the first competition. I was like, yes, I won, and then I got the microphone and was like, it was so awkward, because we never do that. We never used to talk like thanking everyone. I don't know. And on the local competitions, we used to do it, and I was fine. But then when I went to Canberra for the nationals, and I was also passing the microphone, I was like, the only thing I had to say, I say, hey, Joe, I won, and you have my jersey. You know that. Oh, so just stay with it. I'm cool. Just stay with my jersey. Yeah, that was Australia was so much fun. We actually was filmed for a movie that it was called Trials is Dead. It was a series from this guy from Sydney. I'm not sure his name right now. He made a couple of movies called Trials is Dead, and when I was featured on one of them, and we filmed down in Sydney by the rocks next to the ocean, like on some cliffs. And yeah, it was so much fun. I'm still friends with a lot of the guys there, and there's actually a really good chick called Janine Johnfields. I think she's a world champion, and she's really good trials rider. Also from Brisbane, Australia. I have some really nice stories from being from living over there 2 years.
Yeah, it sounds like such a great time you had there, and it's so great to hear you, embrace the Aussie humor there at your events as well. It sounds like a bit of a backwards old rule that you couldn't get the jersey when you won, but I'm glad you could have a laugh about it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I did. I still have my medal somewhere.
That's the important part. I'd love to hear now, about your career, kind of switching gears and going from competing in trials to competing in enduro events and doing quite well right around the world.
Yeah, I think my whole life I was like, I built my career around bikes till when enduro came, which was, enduro is, it's a newish sport or a newish division of mountain biking. So at around 2015, I actually went to the World Championships, Trials World Championships in Andorra in Europe, and to a World Cup in France. And after I came back, right by the after like 3 months before I went to Europe, I got myself a mountain bike, a trail bike that I wanted to train on. And because I saw some videos of enduro riding, I was like, look, I think this is my thing. I think I'm built for enduro. From the videos I saw, I think it serves my skill set. I used to do really good on the downhill bike back in the day. Well, doing downhill on the rigid bikes. I have the skill, the trials skill set. So I can handle bikes pretty well. So I used to jump. I used to do everything, on a bike. So enduro is like that. Enduro is like it sums up every skill set that you need to have on a mountain bike or on a bike. You need to be a strong pedaler. You need to be a technical rider. You need to have speed on the trails. You need to be, fit for long rides, and you need to know how to jump and take turns. So I had like a little bit of everything. So for me, the switch was natural. So when I came back from Europe, I said to myself, look, I've been riding trials for 20 years, since 1995 till 2015. So I'm like, look, I'm done with trials. I love trials. I want to keep riding trials, but not competitively. Now I want to do it for fun. I actually sold my Monty bike. I had a Monty carbon trials bike, and I did I swapped it with a friend. He had a 24 street trials bike, sort of like the ones Danny McCaskill and Fabio Widmer ride.
Yeah.
It's a 24-inch. So I got myself one of those just to keep the trials thing going on, and I started building up a enduro mountain bike. So this was 2015, and then came the first competition. I said I started training by myself. Nobody told me how to train for enduro. I just I went and found trails. That was like my spirit. I went to find trails. I used to know some of them because of the trials riding. So I'm like, let's explore. I got myself a GPS because I knew how to handle those sort of things, and I had the mentality of exploring. So I started doing that, and then I did my first competition on enduro bike. It was actually on a town far away, about 12 hours from here.
Okay.
And it was a 3-stage race, and I punctured on the first stage by like a really big flat on a pedaling section, so I was done. On the second stage, I had also another big flat, but this time it was going down. So I just continued going down flat, like rim on the ground, like Sam Hill sort of thing. And then so I didn't do good on that stage. And on the third stage, I'm like, look, the third is my chance to come back. I pumped the tire to 35 psi. I didn't have like really good tires and anything, or rims, just regular stock, low quality stuff at first.
Yeah.
And I won that stage.
Oh wow.
And I was actually, by that time, I was I think 38. So I was pretty big pretty old for riding competitively, some would say, but I still I won that stage, and actually by a lot. One of my friends, he was one of the ones that used to win. We used to ride Master, which is 35 plus. So it's basically all the old school downhill guys.
Yeah.
And so it was a pretty tough, category. But I got confidence. I said to myself, look, if I beat him like for, I think it was 11 seconds or something. It was a pretty big margin for it was like a 3-4 minute stage. So I'm like, hell yeah. So that was the first stage. After that, I got an offer from a team, and we got sponsored by Trek, and they gave us bikes at cost. It was nothing big. But what I did is I sold my bike, and I bought a dedicated, enduro bike, which was a Trek Slash 9.8,
Fantastic.
27.5, and it was one of those like blue and green bikes, and that was such a different bike. I had a giant Trans 140 millimeter bike. It was, sort of kitted out, but nothing like 160 millimeters front and back, wide rims, good tires, good brakes. It was so different, instantly.
Yeah.
The next three races, it was like the Enduro National Cup. The first race, I ended up like 17th because I couldn't finish the first two stages. But then after that, I won the next three competitions, back to back. I got second in the end at the overall, so I did pretty good. And
That's amazing, man.
I was doing actually like elite, like top 5, top 8 on the elite category by my timing. So I was, for a 38-year-old, just trying, something completely new again, because I had been riding trials for 20 years. I was doing pretty good. I knew I could be better, obviously, but everyone was looking at me. So after that, I competed next year, and I became national. I won the cup next year, and then the year after that, I stopped. Which I turned 40. I ended up racing in the elite category. So for me, like the master, I knew I could win, but I wanted like I wanted more pressure or more. I wanted to ride a higher level.
Right.
Because that year we had the EWS here in Colombia. So I knew if I competed with the elite, I could do better. I could do better on the EWS, and I wasn't mentioned. My dream was to ride EWS competitions, and we had the first
fantastic.
round here. We had one round here in Colombia, so I trained for that. And that year I did like top 6. I was like 6 on the elite level cup, and that year I got second on the EWS 40 plus category. So it was pretty good because we had riders from all over the world here in Colombia, and having a second place, it was like wow, like 2 years after getting into enduro riding, being able to compete at world level and having a trophy from the EWS second place with the masters, I was like, wow, this is like a dream come true. So everything, I was doing pretty good. I was doing pretty good on the enduro, and I became like a living legend. We could say a lot of people were like, wow, this guy's pretty good, and everyone was noticing me, and they wanted to sponsor me, and even for for an old guy, I was riding even with I used to compete downhill on my enduro bike with the on the elite categories here on the regional level, not on the national level, on the regional level. And I used to podium, and I used to podium second, third, even sometimes first. Riding with the young blokes, so they were pretty scared of me.
Man, it's just such a great story there, and super inspiring to hear that you didn't let any potential barriers like your age or the bike you were riding or anything like that get in your way. It sounds like you just had this deep sense of self-belief and confidence that you could do it and you could get better. And for sure, when a better bike came along, that did help a little bit. But it sounds like the underlying factor there was just you believing in yourself and knowing that you can get better. And you did it. It's just fantastic to hear.
Yeah, exactly.
And, how much of an impact do you think that self-belief had in your success there in the enduro events?
I think self-believing. I think self-belief is something that we need to take into account for every aspect of our lives. It's part of the confidence side of the world or the equation. If you have like the same that we were talking about a while back. The confidence side is really important, and it's analogy for self-believing. So I think you need to believe in yourself. I think you need to focus because of how you believe. You know what I asked? Hold on one second. I have 3 dogs here, and they're pretty loud. And they're actually Australian cattle dogs.
Is that right?
Australian cattle dogs, and they're really good watchdogs.
Lots of energy.
Every time a lot of energy and a lot of noise.
Yeah, no, they're doing great so far. It's
so
all good.
self-believing helped me for sure, and I think self-believing helped me with being better. Like, for example, when I went to compete on the elite category and I was 40, I was like, look, I can do this. And it doesn't matter what people think. I could be old or whatever, but I want to try it. And I want to push myself a little bit more. But I could say in retro perspective, if someone told me today, what would I have changed from that time of my life? I would probably say I would listen more to my angel, to my fear side of the equation, and less to my devil, which is confidence. Because I think I would have enjoyed riding more, even though I enjoyed it a lot, even though it was so fun. Still competing at a high level is more stressful, and having that pressure takes away a little bit of the fun. And I would say I would have ridden more for fun, less for competition, which, as you know, and it's something that we could talk about later on, brought me to my accident, which was listening more to my devil side of the equation and less to my angel side.
Right. Yeah, I like where you're going with this. And the accident is definitely something I think it's important for us to talk about and share today. But I love what you were saying there about, riding for fun rather than riding for anything else. And it really kind of resonated with me because thinking about that, fun is the reason all of us start mountain biking in the first place.
Yeah.
It's the one common ground we all have. And often, we can let things like competition or looking cool or anything else that's outside of ourselves maybe get in the way of that fun. But at the end of the day, we've got to make sure we focus on that because that's the one thing that's important.
Exactly. I would say that for sure. I mean, nothing is better than doing anything for fun. So just, if you focus on for fun all your life, it would be a lot better if you focus on, showing off someone and you can podium or you can win races.
Totally. Yeah. So, on the note of, maybe listening to your angel and things not going to plan, I know back in 2019, you had a life-changing experience. Can you speak a little bit about, your accident and what happened there?
Yeah, for sure. It's something tough, and it's something that still haunts me. But I like to talk about it not only to create awareness, but also to, whenever I talk about it, it's something that helps me cope with it at the same time. So 2019, one of the things I did really good was urban races. I think it was I had to do a lot with the trials skills, because urban races have a lot of stairs, a lot of concrete stuff, which we also used to do a lot on our trials bikes. So being able to ride on stairs on, a full suspension 200 millimeter bike was so easy for us because, trials bikes don't have any suspension. And we used to go up and down stairs and walls and whatever and whatnot. So it was like really natural for me to ride urban races. And I was actually winning a lot of races and doing, really good times. And I always got invited to the big races here in Colombia. And one of the most famous one that I did was when one is the Manizales Urban Downhill and the other one is the Red Bull Cerro Abajo Monserrate, which is in Bogota, riding down a hill that it's about 2.5 kilometers down, and it's stairs like from top to bottom, rock like stairs made of rocks. So it's really tough downhill racing on man-made stuff. And I did pretty good on those races, but on one of those, I was actually riding with some of the guys from Canada too. We had it's an international competition, and during one of the runs, it was actually the final. These races were more exhibition races because it had nothing to do with any division. So basically, whatever position you got, it was more of a show and for the people at the venue, because these venues were normally chosen on neighborhoods that needed to get better. So they wanted to promote tourism. So these races were done on neighborhoods with bad history, with violence and drugs and whatever. So the cities here in Colombia are and we're trying to promote these places with downhill urban competitions. And I did a few. Actually, my most famous video on my YouTube channel has now, I think it's 122 million views.
Wow.
And it's from a race here in Colombia, in Medellin. It's an urban race. It was actually from my qualifying run, but it's just so amazing because it's down these neighborhoods which can only be accessed through paths with steep stairs. There's inside the neighborhoods there aren't any roads. Wow. Like there are roads around the neighborhoods, but inside the neighborhoods they're just like paths with steep stairs, and they're like shortcuts for if you wanted to go the long way, you could go walking on the road, which has a less incline, but these stairs take you to the top of the mountain way quicker because they just shoot up. So this video is famous for that competition, and it was in 2018. But then again, in 2019, I was invited to a competition in Bogota, which is the capital city of Colombia. And on my final run, we had a set of stairs, which was a long set of stairs, but it was actually new stairs, not old stairs and narrow stairs. They were like recently made, wide, well-made stairs, but they were pretty long. They were about, I would say, 50 meters, 60 meters long or more. And they were in sets of, for example, 20 stairs. Then we had like a 3-meter gap, and then 20 stairs, then 3-meter gap. And each gap is a flat piece of walking path. So you have like sets going down, and we could jump from one gap to the other.
Wow, timing that must have been difficult.
Yeah, but the thing is that these stairs were not all of them were the same. Right. So you could only gap a few of them, and the rest of them, the last bit you couldn't. They were too far away. So on my final run, I gapped the first gap that you could gap, but I went too fast. And the next one, I couldn't gap it, and my bike just catapulted me forward. Oh. And from that moment on, I just remember myself lying on the floor without any motion at all. I knew I was in big trouble. I was awake, and I told my friends that were around me, look, call this, one of my friends' stepfather, he's a neurosurgeon. I said, look, call my friend, tell his dad that something really bad happened to me, so we know what we need to do. And that's all I said to him. And from that moment on, I spent 3 months in the ICU, connected to a ventilator. Basically, I couldn't breathe. Basically, I couldn't move from the neck down. I was in the ICU conscious all the time. you know, being in ICU is such a tough experience, just being there. Now being there without being able to talk, because when I'm connected to a ventilator, you cannot speak. You can only like click, but you cannot speak because your vocal cords don't get any air, so you cannot talk. And I couldn't move also, and everything had to it was tough time. It was such a tough time. ICUs are bone cold, and they had to I had to when you get this sort of injuries, you lose everything, like absolutely everything. You cannot breathe, you cannot function your bowels. I mean your bowels, sphincters, or you cannot pee, you cannot poo. Everything has to be done for you, and you cannot stay still all the time, because then you get pressure sores. So every hour, every 2 hours, they need to move you from one side to the other, because if you stay there and basically because you're not moving, you get pressure sores, and pressure sores can kill you. Actually, they're so bad that they can kill you. So this was tough times. After that, I spent 1 year hospitalized at home. So basically, the whole hospital was sent to my house. I mean, all the equipment, oxygen, nurses, physiotherapists, everything was on my house. And I spent 1 year recovering little by little. The first time I bathed on a shower was about 4 months after the accident.
Wow.
Before that, I could only bathe on my bed. So they would actually put like a plastic thing underneath me, and I had to be bathed with with a little water on the side, and they would just bathe me, like a little baby. It was tough. It was everything was hard, like from talking to the therapies. I had respiratory therapies 6 times a day. I had to be when you have a ventilator, and when you have a tracheostomy, which is the opening in your throat to connect the ventilator, your lungs produce a lot of secretion, and that secretion needs to be sucked every 2 hours. And I got off the ventilator after 3 months, more or less, after I came out from the ICU. But I needed oxygen, and I needed to be sucked from the secretions every an hour, every 2 hours. So this was it was tough times. I was on my bones, all my muscles disappeared for completely. I was destroyed. I have a saying that I say to my friends and followers. I say, it's not the strength of your muscles, it's the strength of your soul. And it's something I learned. And it's a bit of it's not to be taken literally. It's to be taken spiritually or mentally or psychologically. Sometimes we only focus on our strength, on our muscles and our body, and we forget our mind. And a lot of people live with depression, a lot of people live with stress and whatever, and it's because of that. Most of us get into that, like we were talking before, into that spiral of death, where we train, focus, but we forget our minds, and we forget to have fun, and we forget to live well. And I was reminded that every day. And every day of my life, or not every day, every hour of my life, since the moment I opened my eyes, from the moment I opened my eyes to the moment I closed my eyes during the day, the consciousness of being alive was a struggle. And I had to have the strength, not in my muscles, but in my mind, in my soul, to be able to cope with living that way. And to have the mindset to say to myself, look, If I can beat this now, I can beat this tomorrow. And if I can beat this tomorrow, I can get better the day after tomorrow. And if I can get better the day after tomorrow, I will get better every day. And that was my main focus after the accident. I didn't know how well I would get, but I knew I loved and love life so much that for me it's more important to give the best of me than just retire and give away to depression and loneliness and not being able to recognize myself as before and just say goodbye to myself and just let out suicide or die or just not want to live anymore. I wasn't going to let that go so easily. I knew somewhere inside me myself still existed, and I have recovered myself a lot, and I think it's a better me. It's a better expression of me now. So
Wow.
I think that's one of the conclusions I can tell you guys.
Man, thank you. Thank you for digging so deep and sharing this, such a tough part of your personal story with us. I think it is such both a story of disaster for you in the physical sense, but also, such an incredible show of your inner strength and resilience. And like you say, really letting the strength of your spirit shine through. I love that. And it really shows when you talk.
So it's been tough, but it's been beautiful. And I like to talk about it because I let go little by little. But it still gets me. It's still something. Sometimes I have this analogy. So some of you guys know what I'm talking about. It's like watching yourself die, and then looking at yourself dead, but you're still alive. But the old you, it's not there anymore. You cannot do anything that you did before. You cannot ride bikes. You cannot speak well. You cannot swallow well. You cannot eat the same. You cannot do anything that you did before, and you need to start all over. So it's like starting a new life, and you have to mourn your old self all the time, because you remember I remember my old self, which I have concluded it's something that we need to people that have experienced stuff like me people need to take into account that it's not that we have changed. It's still us. It's still me. It's still Patricio. It's just a different Patricio that's doing different stuff, but it's still me. So it's not that there's an old Patricio and a new Patricio. It's still Patricio. It's just me doing different stuff. So it's a way to look at it in a positive way, half glass full way.
Yeah.
But it's still something that it's a mooring that I need, that I'm still doing. I'm still living. Sometimes it's hard. I'm not saying that nobody's life is perfect. Most of the time, 95% or 98% of my life, I'm happy, and I'm really happy with all my ventures that I have right now. I have a lot of stuff going on, and that gives me joy and keeps me happy. But still, it's something. It's tough. It's tough to lose everything, and I think that's one of the reasons we're talking here, because what I've lived these past years is something really, something that needs to inspire people, and all the things that I've learned, I want to tell everyone. And look, it's something that I said to myself in the hospital. I said, look, if I live through this, I want to speak to everyone about what's happening to me, because I want people to learn from the experiences I've learned.
Thank you. There's so much here that we can unpack, and so much that I'm learning from talking to you, and that I'm sure everyone listening will be as well. I think, it takes such a strength of character again to face, like you're saying, mourning your old self constantly every day and still showing up with a
Yeah.
glass half full attitude that build this new self that you're becoming every day. So I'd love to hear a little bit now about, some of the projects that you are working on. I know something we haven't mentioned yet is your fantastic YouTube channel, which, you were very active on before the accident and you've continued to work on. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, exactly. Before I crashed late 2019. I was uploading stuff on my YouTube channel, just rides I used to do, epic rides. Nothing, nothing production. Really, there wasn't a big production. Just I uploaded the whole ride and that's it, like the whole downhill run or whatever.
Yeah.
And one of my when I crashed, I'm out from the hospital early to 2020, before the pandemic. And one of the first things I did when I got myself a head mouse, I actually handled my phone and my computer with a head mouse that I got back in the day. I got on my social media and I'm like, guys, I'm here again. And I saw a lot of notifications from videos that I was tagged in. And I saw it all over Facebook, a video that I posted on YouTube. It had like 10 million views. I'm like, hell, I'm famous. I'm
Wow.
famous. But then I thought, look, they must have stolen that video from me because I have it on my YouTube channel. Why is it on
Okay.
Facebook? So I went on my YouTube channel and it was like exploding. I had before the accident, I had like 1,000 subscribers. And now I was like at 26,000. I'm like,
Wow.
hell, this is amazing. In 3 months, so many subscribers. Why? And
Hmm.
then I checked on that video and it had like also like 10 million views on YouTube. So
Hmm.
so I said to myself, look, I have an opportunity here. I want to monetize with YouTube. I want to take this opportunity. I have so much videos that me writing that I haven't posted because no, I didn't have the time to edit. I didn't have the computers to edit, whatever. So I got myself into the task of learning how to manage a YouTube channel. I started to monetize. I started to upload stuff. I started to do my thumbnails. I started to learn how to use Premiere Pro, After Effects, Photoshop, all these programs, and also everything that needs to be known about social media and uploading and thumbnails and tags and
Wow.
descriptions and timing and followers and comments and everything that goes around this. And this was my mindset for that 2020. And the channel exploded. I have now 400, almost 418,000 subscribers. So that's like 500,000 subscribers,
Wow. Congratulations.
which is, it's amazing. It's huge. And at first, the first 2 years, I had a lot of material that I had from before that I uploaded and I edited myself. And a lot of the trial stuff, a lot of the enduro and downhill races, which I never uploaded on YouTube. And then after that, I started working with friends. They will, I have, everyone in Colombia that rides mountain bike is my friend. So I have a lot of my good friends are really talented riders. So I gave them GoPros and they would do videos of competitions here and all over the world. So I started to upload those on my channel and keep it
Wow.
going till today. And that's been my say one of my main things that I'm doing. It's managing this, not only learning all the skills that are needed to create content, meaning I do intros, I do flybys on maps with special programs like Earth Studio. I do some animation with After Effects. I do a lot of editing stuff. So I needed to learn those, and that's part of my process. But also uploading and managing and programming media and doing videos here and there. And actually, I designed some videos, and I told my friends, "Look, let's do this video with drones. Let's go to this riding spot, and I did all the production." So I've been blessed with that, and it's something that has kept me going. Something that I still do, And it's part of me also being in the community, loving bikes. It's something that I've never stopped doing. So that's fun. It's pretty fun.
No, it's such a cool story behind your channel there. And I just love what you're talking about there about, seeing this opportunity and seizing it, just embracing the new process of learning, and continuing to be such an asset, and such a positive part of the mountain biking community. So for anyone curious, you can find Patricio's YouTube channel at Patricio Escobar DH for downhill.
Yeah,
And I'll put that tag in the show notes there as well. I
perfect.
do just want to ask you a little bit to explain a little bit more about some of the technology you're using to help you, do all of this editing work and video work on the computer now. It's pretty cool and pretty unique.
Yeah, I have some. My best asset is my head mouse, which is basically a gyroscopic mouse, meaning it has a six axis accelerometer, which detects movement sideways, every other axis. It's the same thing we have on our phones that know that the phone is inclined right, left, up, down, whatnot. So it's
Right.
the same technology that moves the cursor. And the click on the one I have right now is made by biting a switch. So if I want to click, I just bite it once. It's the same as with the finger. Double click, I bite it twice. I just bite it and keep it, on hold. And with that, I can do basically anything. I like as if someone had their hands.
Wow, that's
I
amazing.
can do any complex. It's not as precise if I want to like draw. It's not as precise, but it lets me at least do editing, which doesn't need a steady hand. For
Yeah.
me, a steady head doesn't need a steady head, and and I can do a lot of stuff. I haven't studied graphic design or editing or production or anything, but I just learned from YouTube channels, and I think I do pretty good, and I like to explore that side of me, and I do it with my head. Basically, I use Macs. I use a Mac computer and an iPhone, which are really accessible oriented technologies,
Hmm.
and that has helped me basically be communicating, talking with my friends, learning stuff all the time. I actually learning how to. I downloaded a virtual DJ program, and I'm learning how to mix music, which is
Wow, that's
one of the things I
fantastic.
also love. So I'm doing like I would say what anyone can do with their hands, but without using my hands. And look, if I can do it with my head, if you can do it with your hands, I can do it with my head. So that's it's been my mission to do whatever I want with a computer without using my hands.
So cool to hear. And you know what? I'm pretty excited to hear some of your beats when you start producing music going along with your videos there. I think they'll go hand in hand.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. And you mentioned that you've got, some friends out there with GoPros that are part of your YouTube channel. I know we'll chat in before we hit record a little bit about someone else close to your heart who's doing a lot of riding, and that's your son.
Yeah, exactly. My son, he's 20,
Okay.
and he rides basically mountain bikes really good. He's a really talented rider. I would say in many ways more talented than me.
Wow.
Uh, he's very stylish, really very, very stylish. Has really good jumping technique. He's fast. He has trials skills because when he was little, that's the first time I taught him was trial skills, and then after that he tried dirt jumping, and then after that he just went enduro and downhill riding. So he has a pretty nice skill set. He does some of my videos sometimes. He's also in uni, so he's a little bit busy. He's on his 20s, early 20s,
Yeah.
and but he's writes and he has my whole blessing for riding, and it's something I taught him. It's part of his life, and it's something I cannot take. I cannot take away from him because it would be like going against myself. I taught him how to ride. I taught him everything he has in his life. Why take it away from him? Because some people might say, "Look, if you crash riding your bike, why do you let your kid ride?" I'm like, "Look, that's what I taught him. Let him enjoy it. Make it a learning process for him. He's also learning from my experience from the crash, so he will probably take care more of himself more than me. So that's there."
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so great that writing is still such a big part of the family and you're able to teach someone so close to your heart. I love it.
Yeah, I actually, we go to some of the races and hang around and watch him, and he's pretty good.
How do you feel while you're watching him?
I'm amazed. I'm amazed by how well he jumps, especially. He's such a talented whipper. His whips are like, oh, like Jackson Wilson sort of kind.
Yeah.
It's like really good whipper.
Wow, that's so cool. I'm
It's
gonna have to
amazing.
go back and watch some videos there. I love it. I am going to be respectful of your time. I know we've been talking for a little while here, but I did have just one other subject I was really dying to touch on. I know as well as putting lots of time into the media stuff and into your YouTube channel these days, you're also doing some other work, which I think is really important as well. You mentioned you're working as a guest speaker and a motivator. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm starting that side of my life. I've done a couple of conferences, not really big, but it's something that a lot of people have asked me to do,
Hmm.
and I think I have a really good story to tell, and it's something I really really want to share with everyone, and it's been so awesome. The ones that I've made, people stop and thank me and cry and tell me, "Look, Patricio, you really have changed the way I think. Thank you for being part of us today." And that for me is like, wow, yeah, that's exactly what I came for. I wanted to
Hmm.
touch you in your heart, in your deep within, and make you shake around and rethink life. Maybe you're taking it too fast, too seriously, and it's been a nice new venture. I'm just starting, but it's something that you will see me a lot. In the next couple of months, you will probably see me a lot doing, and it's also a way to get some income. So everything works fine when you have something to do, something to share, and you also get paid for that. You can pay your bills, have a family and stuff. It's a good compromise. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy trying to reinvent myself, and I think it's still one of the best things after my experience with my YouTube channel, being able to speak to people and change deep within what they think of life. It's like amazing for me.
Hmm. Man, that's fantastic. And I can't wait to see where this new journey takes you. I think, yeah, it's just such an inspiring story you have. And you have such a gift at telling it and inspiring other people as well. So that's fantastic. I'm stoked with where you're heading with it.
Yeah, I'm glad I shared my story.
Absolutely. So just to wrap things up here, I know we've talked about so many different things in this conversation. But if there was one thing you hope that listeners of this podcast take away and remember or think about, what would it be?
I would say love life, or on top of anything in the world. Never give up on the opportunity that you have on being here, because we get only one chance, and it's such a small little window that we have on being conscious in this world. So I think, I don't want it to sound corny or too deep, but it's just the truth. Sometimes we forget about the experience of life, and we only focus on what people think of ourselves, and just, we want to show off from being the best writer, being the best engineer, or being the best architect, or whatever career you want to take, more mechanic or whatever. And I think life is about more of having fun and producing happiness. There's a nice analogy that I have for people is we as human beings are factories that our only purpose and our main purpose is to produce. Our profits is our happiness. If we do whatever we do in life is for being happy. We get married for being happy. We have children for being happy. We ride our bikes for being happy. Everything we do in life is about being happy. But if we look at ourselves and we're not happy with whatever we are doing, you're having losses. You're a company. You're a enterprise with losses. If your life is not happy, then you need to rethink whatever you're doing. Rethink it and do whatever makes you happy. If you're happy, your factory, your company, your whatever you want to call your life is producing profits. If it's producing profits, means it's producing. If you're not, then you're working at a loss. And what sense do you have, living at a loss? And that applies to everything: sports, relationships, businesses, whatever you do. Just be happy.
Man, such a great analogy. And I think that's such a great place to end this podcast. Really summarizing, this incredible journey of life that you've been through so far and that you continue to embrace and get the absolute best out of. Man, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and learning more about your life story and this incredible journey that mountain biking has taken you on. So thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me and let me ask all of these questions. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was really my pleasure, Jake. I love doing this. Anyone listening wants to contact me for whatever reason, just you want to know me or talk to me or whatever. I'm here. My social medias are open for anyone to talk to me, and I'm always there. And thanks a lot for the opportunity, Jake.
No problem, my man. It's been an absolute pleasure. And once again, all of Patricio's social media and YouTube handles will be down in the show notes. So feel free to check him out and check out, some of the great stuff he's up to.
All right, guys, take care.
What's up, guys? Just one more thing before you head out into the mountains. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe. And don't be a stranger. I'd love to hear from you about any topics or any particular episodes you enjoyed, and even about any guests you'd like to hear me have on the show at some stage in the future. You can find me on Instagram at the_mind_mountain. This podcast, mountain biking, and mindset are all things that are very close to my heart, so I feel super grateful to be able to share these conversations with you. So thank you, dear listeners, for taking the time to listen. I'll see you on the next one.